if you didn't watch the playoff games, if you only watched the highlights last week, don't put any money on any of these games this weekend. And that's honest. You know, if you're a highlight bettor, this is the most important time. And welcome to Pocket Protection in association with TDR, brought to you by Bet99 Sportsbook. Every game starts at Bet99.com. We are responsible gambling. I'm Ryan Doyle. That is Steve Budin, the man, the myth, the legend, a man who barely gets anything wrong in the world of sports gambling and has the best hats probably on the planet. Good to see you.
I was going to save it for when we talk about Dallas, but I'll bring it out at that time.
All right, fair enough. Well, you're going to have to wait. If you're waiting for props, not a prop bet, but a prop on the show, you're going to have to wait just a little longer for Steve. But it is good to see you. Can I just ask this question maybe right off the top? Because I think this playoffs, for some reason, and maybe it's the youth of the AFC quarterbacks, maybe it's the interesting narratives when it comes to what's been going on with the Philadelphia Eagles, not getting over the finish line at the end of the season, not having that dominant team in the NFC, instead having a multitude of NFC teams that look like they can get to the big dance, or the AFC, you know, the rivalries that have started to begin between not only Cincinnati and Kansas City, but you throw Buffalo in the mix, you throw some other teams into the mix like Jacksonville and the youth. Is this the most buzzed about playoffs that we've had in a very long time, or am I a crazy person?
No, well, I think we're seeing competition at an even level at this stage like we've never seen before. And it's like what you said, you know, we always had those one or two dominant teams where you weren't questioning whether they'd win or not. Maybe you had a little bit of a question of whether they would cover. I think at this point you look at these games and you say to yourself, I can make an argument for every team to win. You know what I mean? To actually win the game outright. And that makes it very hard on a gambler coming in, because we always like to have an inclination of what we're going to look at and what we're going to do, and then go and do the research and try to justify our feelings, right? But when you're looking at a game and you're like, man, I can really make an argument for either one of these teams, wow, you're right where the bookmakers want you.
Okay, explain that. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, bookmakers thrive on indecision, right? The only way to get action on both sides is by having people look at a line and look at a game and go, when the whole world is looking at a game and going, I'm either going to bet team A or not bet, you're going to have a lopsided tally on that game, which doesn't allow the bookmakers to really make extra money when they win and lose less money when they lose by having that vigorish kick in their favor, right? So when all the action is on one side, it's not like they're trying to even out their books, but if they're going to have a $60,000 decision, they'd rather it be $80,000 on one side and $20,000 on the other than be $60,000 on one side and zero on the other. Because in those scenarios, when there's 80 versus 20, they're going to win a little more when they win the game and lose a little less. At 60, they're pretty much betting the game themselves. So that's the difference. And I think that when a bettor looks at a game and really doesn't have a clear-cut decision to make, you find them going both ways. And I think that's a big advantage to the bookmaker, and that's right where they want you.
All right, let me play the other side of it then, because I want to give the player a little bit more of an advantage, because my recommendations are the following. If you didn't watch the playoff games, if you only watched the highlights last week, don't put any money on any of these games this weekend. And that's honest. You know, if you're a highlight bettor, this is the most important time to go back and actually watch every single snap that happened in each game. And if you think I'm crazy, well, maybe you're on the wrong show. Maybe you're watching the wrong show. You've got to do your homework now if you want to make some money, because I believe Steve is absolutely right. Indecision is in favor now of the bookmaker. It's not in your court anymore. They're counting on you to waver, to, you know, kind of say, oh, well, I like this and I can make a case for that. Go back, watch the tape. You know, if you've already tried to set your own lines, maybe you make your own adjustments. You know, that's what I do. I sat on Tuesday and I watched every single game all over again. I had already watched the games on the weekend, even the Monday one. And, you know, now I've written my lines. Now I've watched it back. I've made a couple of different, edits here and there. And now I feel like a more comfortable, decided gambler going in. That's how I give out the advice that I do, you know, at least tell you where I'm going with my money. Steve, maybe I'm way off on this, but I think information is king here.
Well, it is. It's why people watch our show, right? And why our numbers on the show have been consistently going up week in and week out. And I think it has to do with guys who do their own homework, watch the games, but still really don't know which way to go. And they're looking for a little either, someone who's going to co-sign their feelings, or they're looking for a little help to get over that center line one way or the other. And I think by taking a position on every game like we do and not shying away, like how many times do you watch these shows and guys go, I don't like this game, I don't like this game, if I had a gun to... We don't really do that. You know, whether we like the game or we don't like the game, we take a position on every game that we talk about. We put our name and our reputation on the line, and I think our viewership appreciates that.
They do. So let's get into it. We're going to start off with the first game up for bids on Sunday, and that is the Buffalo Bills -5.5 versus the Cincinnati Bengals. The total here is 49. Both teams struggling against backup quarterbacks last weekend. That is a very big, clear takeaway from last week's action. Where do you see this game going? Because we'll see if we line up on this.
And I know who I'm talking to here. So, I mean, I see I know the helmet behind you. I got all that, and, but listen, look, both of these teams survived, right? What was a wild card weekend. Cincy needed a big defensive play to survive because Baltimore was knocking on heaven's door with the game tied, and thanks to a huge defensive play, linebacker Logan Wilson dislodged the ball from the Raven quarterback Tyler Huntley's hands, and defensive end Sam Hubbard scooped it up, took it to the house, 98-yard fumble return. That turned out to be the decisive score in that game. Buffalo had its own close calls, right? They blew an early 17-0 lead. They found themselves mid-third quarter trailing the Fish 24-20, all while Miami was being led by who? Their third-string rookie quarterback, Skylar Thompson. And in that fight or flight moment, Josh Allen decided to fight. If you're a Buffalo fan, that's something that's a good thing. A couple of touchdown passes later, and it allowed the Bills to escape, and I say escape, with a victory. And believe me, they escaped. I think it's safe to say the Bills have a few questions, maybe a few more than the Bengals. But at the top of that list is, how did Miami come into Buffalo and score 31 points? Bills had 3 turnovers, one of which led to a defensive touchdown. Now, you can also ask similar questions about Cincinnati and their win over Baltimore, right? They led a team using their backup quarterback to outgain them 364 to 234 yards, and allowed them to battle back from behind 3 times if you count that last, knock at heaven's door on the goal line that they ran into trouble and got the ball taken away from them. The bottom line for me is Cincy quarterback Joe Cool, that's what I call him, Joe Cool Burrow, has led the Bengals to 9 straight wins, 13-3 record in the last 15 games. It's also worth noting that they did lead Buffalo 7-3, and they were in possession on a drive in their last game when Damar Hamlin had the unfortunate incident that happened to him that ended up in a miracle. That suspended game, if you count that for Cincy, which is a big if, because it's just, that game had a lot of game left in it. But that suspended game could have gotten them home field. They could have a grudge and a chip on their shoulder. Players play better with motivation. Look, I think these teams are as evenly matched as it gets. This is one of those games. You look at it, and if I told you Buffalo won this game, you'd be like, I can see that. And if I told you Cincinnati pulled this game out in the end, you're like, I can see that. So I think the advantage here lies in the point spread. Buffalo, with the home field advantage as an equal team, should be 2.5 or 3 points favorite here, not 5.5. In fact, I'm going to buy this line up to 6. I've got a little bankroll left over from the regular season, actually a lot of bankroll left over from the regular season, so I'm going to lay the 120, which is 10 cents extra. No big deal. Take that up to 6 points, which is a much more prominent number than 5.5. I'm gonna take that 6 points, lay the 120, and bet the Bengals here.
All right. You know me and Joe Burrow, BDJ, Big Dick Joe. Mr. LSU, Mr. Smoking cigars in the locker room. This guy, you're right, is the definition of cool. This Bengals team has been on a hot streak roll since, right towards the end of the season. They were doing everything right.
I feel a big butt coming. Okay.
I like big butts, Steve, and I cannot lie. This game is going to be an absolute 100% bloodbath, and here's why. Josh Allen made mistakes last weekend. And if you watch the games where he makes mistakes and what he does in the game subsequent to that, he corrects and fixes those mistakes. Now, I watched the game again, and a lot of those mistakes were caused by the fact his offensive line was not there for him. I'm going to guess that Sean McDermott is buttoning that offensive line up this week as much as he possibly can. I would be stunned if that wasn't one of the main areas of focus for this Bills team. If they're not just constantly practicing snaps, having that really good, solid Buffalo Bills defense come in on them and make sure that Josh is uncomfortable so that he knows in a game how exactly to react to the Bengals. And I don't love what Cincinnati did last week. The idea that you had Tyler Huntley and no wide receivers ball out on you and beat you by, a good margin in the yards category, that's disturbing to me. So as much as I'm willing, and maybe it's the Kool-Aid that I drink when I put this helmet on. I sleep in this at night, by the way. Maybe it's the Kool-Aid that I drink as far as being a Bills fan, but I see the Bills bouncing back and bouncing back big. I'm going to take the Bills on the spread minus the 5.5. I'm going to take the Bills team total, and this has been a real gift to me all year because that number usually sits around 26, 27 points. They've shattered it most weeks. I'm going to take the Bills team total over the total, and I'm going to take this game over the total of 49 because I think the Bills are going to roll so much against this Cincy defense, they may crack 35, 40 points on their own.
Well, nothing
feels
else
good to get that off my chest.
Yeah, it's going to make it for an interesting show next week. There's one of us that's going to have to eat a little crow, and that's okay. That's okay. God knows, and after 30 years of being in this business, I've had my share of crow. Better with ketchup, but I've had my share of crow. But we'll see what happens. I still like my pick.
I'd rather hang out with Sheryl Crow than eat the crow, but there we go.
Isn't she like 60 years old now, Sheryl Crow? Ew.
I met her once. She's a very, very nice lady, very attractive lady, very kind lady.
Yeah.
So.
I like the stuff she did with Kid Rock. Kind of put him on the country map, and then he made a lot of dough with that crowd.
Yeah, put your picture away, right? There you go.
Yeah,
little Kid Rock, little Sheryl Crow reference. All right, we're going to come back. You really have faith in that Cincy defense?
I think that momentum is huge. I think playing your best ball going into the playoffs means something. We definitely cannot say that about Buffalo. They've taken their foot off the gas a little bit. They have the talent-wise, they should be able to destroy this team. You're absolutely right. But I look at the momentum, and to me, Cincy's got a little bit of the edge with Uncle Mo. But it could go either way. Like I said about all these games this week, I can make an argument for every team playing this week.
If DeMar Hamlin comes out and he's carrying the Buffalo Bills flag to center field.
Big emotion. Listen, and football players revved up on them pain pills and steroids. They love emotion.
Right? They'll run through a wall for that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to come back in just a moment. We've got San Francisco -4 against Dallas. Total there 46.5. We'll dissect and give you our winners and predictions. Maybe we'll be on the same side. Chances are the way this started, maybe not. As Pocket Protection continues after this.
As a world champion, when I walked out of the tunnel, I knew I prepared to win. I still do today. Every game starts at Bet99.net.
Welcome to Bet99.net, Canada's home for all your favorite free-to-play casino games, slots, live dealer tables, and progressive jackpots, including Mega Moolah. At Bet99.net, you could be a winner today.
Welcome back to Pocket Protection in association with TDR, brought to you by Bet99 Sportsbook. Every game starts at Bet99.com. We are responsible gambling. Let's get into it. This is the Sunday evening game. San Francisco, why do they put these games on so late? I don't quite understand what happens. Change the playoffs, all of a sudden you're interrupting 60 minutes and everybody's scheduling is off. But maybe that makes me an old man waiting for Andy Rooney to come back and make an appearance. San Francisco -4 versus Dallas. I'm punchy today. The total here is 46.5.
All right, let's get the prop going here.
Here we are. Now, folks, I want to remind everybody, last time Steve put this on, he was not on the Cowboys, simply was talking about them and wearing a hat.
All right, the Brooklyn Cowboys back in the house. All right, so yeah, another bucket list achievement for the Cowboys on Monday, who destroyed Tampa Bay. Picked up their first W on the road in the postseason since Barry Switzer won the Super Bowl number 30 back in 1996. In fact, if you don't count the Super Bowl as a true road game, this was their first win in the postseason as a true visitor in 30 years, almost to the day, January 17th, 1993. Jimmy Johnson's Cowboys beat Steve Young and the Niners at Candlestick. That was the NFC title game. And another bucket list item, it was also their first W versus Tom Brady in now 8 tries. So that being said, let's get down to business. Lots of playoff history between these two teams and lots of memories, depending how old you are. For this old guy, the most memorable one was the catch. Dwight Clark. Every Cowboy fan knows where they were when that catch happened, and most old Cowboy fans still haven't recovered from that. And as I watched the Cowboys brass celebrate in the private box after the win last Monday night at Raymond James Stadium, I couldn't help but think, guys, you just beat a marginal team at best in a wild card round. The Bucs, the same Bucs who entered the postseason with a losing record, even though they play in the worst division in the NFL. And pardon me if I sound like I'm suffering a little bit from buyer's remorse after backing the Bucs in that last game. Well, let's see the Cowboys do it again. You know what I mean? For me, Dak Prescott's error-free game, that was the exception to the rule in the last 2 months. I mean, he entered the playoffs having tossed an interception in 7 straight games, pick sixes in 3 out of 4 games. So now, instead of a lifeless Tampa Bay, Dak faces the best defense in the NFL, the most vicious pass rush, led by Nick Bosa, 18.5 sacks on the season. Bosa led the league in sacks. Also a defense that has a league-high 20 picks and a league-low 3.4 yards per carry on the allowance factor. I think it's worth mentioning that Dallas is also going to be playing on natural grass. Even though they played on natural grass against Tampa, they do prefer the artificial variety, and they've had 2 fewer days off since that wild card round than their opponent, and they have to travel across the country too. So all of this, and what do they get? They get to face rookie quarterback Brock Purdy, who's only won his first 6 starts and is making fewer mistakes than Jimmy G. And the great quarterbacks, right, if you look at all of them, they're great right from the beginning. They don't need 3 or 4 years to come into their own. We talk about the Bradys and we talk about all the great quarterbacks throughout history. They're all good right away. This quarterback has been good right away. All the technical factors to me support the Niners as well. 11 straight wins. They won 13 out of their last 14 outright at home. They've covered 12 out of those 14 as well. I'm going with San Francisco here, and I like the over a little bit, but I'm heavy on San Francisco.
All right, wow. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Cowboy. Yeah. First of all, you should be sending that hat up here. You should be sending it to Canada because I'll wear it proudly because I'm going.
And there are Cowboys in Canada. I'm a Heartland fan, so I know this.
This is true. He's not all about the Kevin Costner program.
No, I'm not a Yellowstone guy. I'm a Heartland guy, 100%.
He got in there early. Here's my question for you, Steve Budin. Which quarterback do you like better, Dak Prescott or Geno Smith?
I like Dak Prescott better than Geno Smith, but that's because I have some old Jet baggage in my tank.
No, it's because Dak Prescott is the better quarterback of the two.
Of course he is.
Geno Smith in the first half last week carved up the Niners. This was a game between the Niners and Seahawks, and no one gave the Seahawks a chance. Now, granted, the Niners collected themselves and figured it out at half. But I think that if you have what happened last week happen this week, the Cowboys will shut you down and shut you out. And I think the blueprint may have been written on how to effectively get to Brock Purdy, how to rattle his cage a little bit, and then how to gain some yards on this San Francisco so-called best defense in the league. I really love the Dallas Cowboys. Sometimes, it's not the technical stuff. Every point that Steve made about being technical is absolutely right on the money. The Niners tick all those boxes, and if you want to follow the technical, go nuts. But we've talked a lot about it during the show this season. Going with your gut, your eye test. Does it pass the eye test? The Cowboys, they laid a clunker at the end of the season. Couple games where it was kind of like, oh, Dallas, the wheels are coming off. But they rectified the situation, just like I was talking about Josh Allen earlier. I think the Dallas Cowboys are getting hot at the right time. I told you in the last podcast that the Giants, I think, are going to beat the Eagles. I think the NFC Championship game is going to be played in Big D. I believe they win this game outright. Give me the 4 points all day. I do lean to the over in this game as well of 46.5 because I think the Cowboys are going to find a way to effectively use the run, use the pass, use the short middle, effectively use CeeDee Lamb. This is a team that has weapons, and I think sometimes, Steve, we forget how powerful Dallas can be. They were world beaters earlier on in the season. They had a lull. They're back all over again.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I also think that past performance means about as much as the technical support, right? You can throw both of those things out because the line incorporates all of that. But that being said, for me, I thought about all the things that you said, and I thought to myself, what's more likely to happen? Is that Dallas D? Is Dak Prescott, more likely to show up with another perfect game, or is that San Francisco D likely to have another bad half. As I've watched these teams all year long, to me it seems more likely that Dak Prescott plays his better games against not so good teams, and that the San Francisco defense, although they have taken some half steps back throughout the season, they tend to show up when they need to show up. So, like I said, what makes it hard is that I can see your point, and I can see an argument for every team. Makes it really hard, but we saved our best show for last. We saved our best show where we both disagreed about both, outcomes in both games for last. And the good news is somebody's going to come out a winner next week, so we'll have something to talk about. There's no chance that we both lose every game, so I think that's a good thing.
I think it's a good thing. It's healthy that you hear both sides of it. Hopefully it helps you make your mind up a little bit, and that is exactly what we do here on the show. The show is called Pocket Protection. That is Tex Budin, Steve Budin. Sir, always a pleasure. I'm looking forward to dissecting the conference championship games with you as we head our way to the Super Bowl.
Let's get him, sir.
Oh, look at that. He got the whole tip in and everything. Pocket Protection in association with TDR. I know that clip's going to come back to haunt me. Brought to you by Bet99 Sportsbook. Every game starts at Bet99.com. We are responsible gambling.